Aquarius. What if tomorrow doesn't change your life because something happens, but because something finally stops? What if the real shift isn't a miracle, isn't a message, isn't even a person coming back, but the moment you quietly realize, I can't keep living like this anymore. Not dramatic, not broken, just tired in a way sleep can't fix. And if you're listening right now, there's a chance this message found you exactly when it was supposed to. Comment one word below. Ready. If you feel something inside you has already started to let go. Because what happens next isn't about the world changing. It's about the version of you that's about to disappear. Aquarius, stay with me for a moment. Not in your head, not in your plans. Just here, in this quiet space where you don't have to explain anything to anyone. There's a kind of tiredness you carry that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from holding too much. Unspoken thoughts, unmet expectations, dreams you kept alive long after the season had changed. You don't talk about it often. People see you as calm, independent, even strong. But strength, when carried alone for too long, starts to feel like weight. And lately, everything feels heavier than it should. Sometimes it shows up in small ways. You stare at your phone a little longer before replying. You cancel plans you once looked forward to. You feel distant in conversations that used to feel alive. Not because you don't care, but because a part of you is quietly asking, is this really all there is? And here's the part most people never admit out loud. You're not exhausted from effort. You're exhausted from hope without movement, from believing in potential instead of reality, from waiting for timing that never seems to arrive. Aquarius, what have you been postponing for the sake of peace? What truth have you softened so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable? At what point did being patient start feeling like being invisible? There's something deeply Aquarian about this moment. Your sign isn't meant to live inside stagnation. You're wired for growth, for evolution, for forward motion. And when life stops expanding, your soul starts suffocating quietly. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough that you begin to feel disconnected from your own energy, like you're living on low battery, even on days when nothing is technically wrong. And maybe that's why this moment feels so strange. Nothing has collapsed. No big disaster, no clear ending. Just this subtle internal shift where your spirit whispers, I can't keep pretending this is enough. This is the kind of awakening that doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with silence, with long pauses, with nights where you can't fall asleep. Not because you're anxious, but because your mind keeps replaying the same question in different forms. What am I actually waiting for? Aquarius, you're not broken for feeling this way. You're not ungrateful. You're not losing your spark. You're simply reaching the edge of an old version of yourself. The one who stayed longer than necessary. The one who adjusted instead of being met. The one who kept the door open even when the air stopped flowing. And here's something no one tells you about this stage. It doesn't feel like motivation. It feels like emptiness first. Like the space between breaths. Uncomfortable, uncertain, but full of hidden possibility. This pause isn't a failure. It's a signal. A quiet invitation from your future self saying, there's more for you than this level of living. So let me ask you something gently, without pressure, without needing an answer right now. If nothing changed for another year, would you still recognize the person you're becoming? Because Aquarius, The moment before awakening always feels like stillness. But stillness is never the end of the story. It's just the space where your next identity is forming, slowly, invisibly, waiting for you to notice that you're ready to move again. There is a moment that feels quieter than pain. Not heavy, not dramatic. Just a gentle inner pause where something inside you starts watching instead of reacting. You begin noticing how familiar certain feelings have become. The same conversations in different voices. The same hopes dressed in new faces. The same promises that almost land, but never quite stay. And what surprises you is not that it keeps happening. It is that a part of you has always known. You are highly intuitive, Aquarius. You sense emotional patterns long before others do. You just rarely admit what you sense when it threatens your faith in people. You keep thinking if you explain yourself one more time, they will finally understand. If you soften your needs just a little, things will balance out. If you stay patient, love will eventually meet your depth. But patience becomes a quiet habit of shrinking. And you do it so gracefully that even you forget you are doing it. You are not afraid of being alone. You are afraid of giving up on someone who could have become something beautiful. So you stay in potential longer than in reality. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin living in almost seen, almost chosen, almost understood. This is where loyalty changes its shape. At first it feels noble, then it feels tiring, and one day it simply feels empty. Not sad, not angry, just emotionally neutral in places that used to glow. The truth is, you are incredibly adaptable. You know how to adjust your frequency to match others. You know how to read rooms, energies, silences. You know how to love in languages that are not even your own. But here is the quiet cost. When you adapt too often, you stop hearing your original signal. You start calling emotional hunger patience. You start calling emotional distance freedom. You start calling emotional imbalance compromise. And none of it feels dramatic enough to leave. It just feels subtly wrong. That is why this pattern is so dangerous for you. It does not scream. It whispers. It feels reasonable. It feels kind. It feels mature. Until one day you realize you have been emotionally present in spaces that were never truly holding you. This is not about blaming anyone. Most people do not mean to take what they are offered freely. They simply accept the version of you that costs them the least, and you give it. Because you are wired to see the good, the future, the potential evolution of souls. But here is the question your intuition keeps circling. At what point does understanding others become abandoning yourself? Not as a dramatic breakup, not as a bold declaration, just as a quiet internal shift where you stop protecting your own emotional truth. You are not meant to disappear into connections. You are meant to coexist with them. Fully. Clearly, authentically. And the pattern you are starting to see now is not here to shame you. It is here to wake you gently. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you feel the difference between effort and reciprocity, you will never confuse them again. This is not the end of your loyalty. It is the end of giving it to situations that cannot meet your depth. And something inside you already feels that change approaching. Not loudly, not urgently, just steadily. Like a frequency slowly tuning itself back to its original signal. There is a strange kind of fear that does not feel like panic. It feels like standing at the edge of something familiar and realizing you no longer belong there. Not because it is bad, not because it hurt too much, but because your soul has quietly outgrown the room. This is the moment that feels heavier than heartbreak. The moment when you understand that nothing is actually stopping you anymore, except the version of you that learned how to wait. You have always been brave in unconventional ways. You challenge systems. You question beliefs. You reinvent yourself more times than most people ever dare to. But emotionally, you learned something different. You learned to stay, to hold space, to believe in people longer than they believed in themselves. And now, the scariest decision is not leaving. It is choosing to no longer participate in what drains you, because waiting has become part of your identity. It feels safe. It feels familiar. It feels like love. Until you notice how quiet your inner world has become, how little you ask for, how easily you adapt to emotional absence. There is a subtle shift happening inside you now. Not explosive, not dramatic, just a soft internal voice that finally sounds clearer than your hope. It says, I do not need more proof. I do not need more signs. I do not need another version of almost. You are not angry. You are not bitter. You are simply tired of negotiating your own presence. And that is what makes this decision so powerful. It is not fueled by pain. It is fueled by clarity. You stop reaching for what does not reach back. You stop translating your feelings into smaller words. You stop teaching people how to treat you, not because you stopped caring, but because you started listening. Aquarius, you were never meant to beg for resonance. Your energy is not designed to chase alignment. It is designed to attract it naturally. The universe responds differently when you stop explaining yourself. It rearranges quietly. Opportunities shift. People who cannot meet you fade without conflict. And something new begins to form in the space you once filled with effort. At first it feels empty, not lonely, just unfamiliar. You wake up with more emotional space than you know what to do with. You notice how peaceful your thoughts sound. You realize how rarely you feel the urge to justify your feelings anymore. This is not emotional detachment. This is emotional sovereignty. You are not closing your heart. You are opening it in the right direction. And here is the question that gently hovers in your awareness now. If you no longer waited to be chosen, who would you become? Not in theory, not in fantasy, but in your actual daily life. What choices would feel lighter? What connections would feel more honest? What version of you would finally have enough room to breathe? The truth is, this decision does not change the world around you immediately. It changes the way the world meets you. People feel your boundaries before you speak them. Energy adjusts to your new frequency. Situations that once confused you suddenly reveal their purpose. And slowly, without forcing anything, your timeline begins to shift. Not because life finally gave you something, but because you stopped settling for emotional gravity. You chose stillness over struggle, alignment over attachment, presence over potential. And in that quiet choice, you did something radical. You came back to yourself, not as the one who waits, not as the one who hopes endlessly, but as the one who knows when enough has already arrived. And that is where your real future begins. Something subtle begins to happen once you release your grip. Not loudly, not like fireworks. More like the air itself starts moving differently around you. You may not even notice it at first. It feels like coincidence. A message arrives from someone who went silent long ago. A door opens where you had already accepted the wall. A situation that felt frozen suddenly wants to explain itself. And the strange part is this: you are no longer waiting for it. That is the paradox no one prepares you for. The moment you stop needing answers, they begin to find you. The moment you stop asking to be seen, you become impossible to ignore. Not because you changed your personality, but because your energy stopped leaking. You are standing in a new frequency now, quieter, more grounded, less reactive. You are not performing your worth anymore. You are inhabiting it. And the world responds differently to someone who is no longer negotiating their presence. People feel it even if they cannot explain it. They sense the emotional independence, the absence of grasping, the calm authority of someone who knows they will be okay either way. This is where your power has always lived, not in control, not in influence, but in detachment without bitterness. You are still warm, still open, still deeply human, but no longer available for emotional transactions that cost you your peace. And that shift creates a magnetic field. People who once took you for granted start remembering you. Opportunities align without force. Even old patterns attempt to re-enter your life wearing new masks, not to test you, but to show you how far you have come. You will notice how differently you respond now. No urgency, no inner rush, no desire to prove anything. You listen, you observe, you feel your body before you give your heart. That is something you did not do before. This is not emotional distance. This is emotional discernment. You are no longer available to be chosen last, or misunderstood, or partially loved. And because of that, the universe treats you as someone who cannot be misplaced. Aquarius, your sign was never meant to live inside attachment. You are ruled by ideas, visions, and future timelines. Your soul thrives in spaces where freedom exists. The moment you release the illusion that you need something to complete you, your path begins to accelerate. Not in chaos, in alignment. It feels almost ironic. The less you seek, the more you receive. The less you explain, the more you are understood. The less you chase, the more life walks toward you. And you realize something quietly profound. Nothing external ever had the power to unlock you. It was always your willingness to stop holding on to what no longer resonated. This is not about winning. It is about returning to your natural state. Curious, sovereign, open without attachment. You do not need to become someone new. You are simply removing what was never truly you. And here's a gentle question that floats into your awareness now. What if everything that is trying to come back is not meant to be reclaimed, but finally released for good? Not as loss, but as confirmation. Confirmation that you have entered a chapter where you are no longer defined by who stays, but by how deeply you stay connected to yourself. The world will keep offering you reflections. Some will look familiar. Some will feel completely new. But you will meet them differently now. From presence, from wholeness, from a quiet place inside that no longer needs to be filled. And that is when the real awakening begins. Not when life changes, but when you realize you are no longer waiting for it to. There is a moment that feels almost gentle, so quiet it could be mistaken for comfort. The past does not come back screaming. It comes back softly, with familiar tones, with memories that still know your name. It knows exactly how to reach you. It does not say you were wrong. It says it understands now. It does not demand. It offers. A different version of the same story, wrapped in new language. And for a second, something inside you pauses. Not because you want to return, but because the body remembers before the mind does. The nervous system recognizes the pattern, the old emotional climate, the rhythm of what once felt like home. This is where the real test lives. Not in pain, not in chaos, but in nostalgia. The kind that whispers instead of warns. You might notice how easily the heart wants to soften again, how quickly it wants to believe, not out of weakness, but because hope has always been one of your most beautiful traits. Aquarius, you do not struggle with letting go of people. You struggle with letting go of the version of yourself that believed in them. The one who waited, the one who explained, the one who loved through uncertainty. That version was sincere, brave, deeply loyal, and yet that version learned to survive in conditions that required you to shrink. Now the universe is offering you a mirror, not to pull you back, but to show you the distance between who you were and who you are becoming. This is not about forgiveness. You already know how to forgive. It is about boundaries that are finally strong enough to hold your future. You feel it in your body now. The difference. Before, you would lean forward emotionally. Now you remain centered. You listen without dissolving. You feel without abandoning yourself. And that subtle change is everything. Because growth does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence where there used to be urgency, like space where there used to be emotional labor, like calm where there used to be negotiation. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are choosing. And that is unfamiliar territory for you. It may feel strange to not respond immediately, to not fix, to not save, to not reopen doors just because they knock. But this is what self-respect feels like in real time. Not loud, not rigid, just steady. The heart still cares, but it does not lead blindly anymore. There is wisdom in your hesitation now. Not fear, not resentment, just clarity. You understand something you did not before. The past does not return to be continued. It returns to be measured. Measured against your current capacity, your current standards, your current emotional intelligence. And you are not the same person who entered that story. You are standing taller now, not in pride, in presence. You know what it costs to betray yourself, and you know how long it took to come back home to your own center. So when familiarity invites you in again, you pause. Not because you are unsure, but because you are finally aware of your own value. And here is a gentle question that arrives without pressure. If nothing had changed in the external world, but everything had changed inside you, would you still choose the same story? Not from longing, not from memory, but from the version of you that now understands peace is not something you negotiate for. It is something you protect. And in that quiet choice, made without drama, without explanation, without apology, you step fully into the life that no longer requires you to disappear to belong. There is a different kind of quiet settling inside you now. Not emptiness, not distance. More like a deep internal calibration. You notice it in the way you listen, in the way you no longer rush to fill silence with explanations, in the way you feel less impressed by promises and more aware of patterns. It is not that your heart has hardened, it is that your awareness has matured. Before, you were drawn to potential, to what something could become, to the future version of people, situations, even dreams. Now something has shifted in your perception. You are paying attention to what exists in front of you. Not the story, not the intention, but the lived reality. How someone shows up when it is inconvenient. How energy is maintained when there is nothing to gain. How care is expressed when no one is watching. This is not pessimism. It is discernment. You are learning the language of consistency, the quiet reliability of effort, the honesty of behavior that does not need to be announced, and it feels strangely peaceful. There is less emotional noise in your world now, less internal debate, less waiting for clarity that used to come from outside. You trust your nervous system more. You feel when something is aligned. You feel when it is performative. You feel when something costs too much of your inner balance. And instead of questioning yourself, you listen. This is a new relationship you are forming, not with another person, but with your own standard. It does not demand perfection. It does not punish mistakes. It simply observes what nourishes you and what drains you. And for the first time, you are not willing to confuse familiarity with truth. You are no longer moved by beautiful language if it is unsupported by presence. You are no longer seduced by visions that require you to carry the emotional weight alone. You are no longer willing to stay in spaces that ask you to constantly adjust who you are. Not because you are detached, but because you finally understand the cost of emotional compromise. You begin to see something clearly now. Love that does not evolve eventually becomes comfort that limits growth. Connection without accountability becomes attachment. Intimacy without effort becomes stagnation. And you are not here to repeat cycles anymore. Aquarius, your soul was designed for expansion, for movement, for ideas that stretch beyond what already exists. You cannot thrive in emotional environments that stay static, that recycle the same conversations, that promise change but resist transformation. So your heart has quietly updated its criteria, not to protect itself from love, but to protect love from being wasted. You are not closing doors. You are refining which ones you are willing to walk through. There is a gentleness in this new standard, a calm confidence, a sense that you no longer need to explain your needs to justify them. You honor what you feel. You observe what unfolds, and you allow actions to speak before you give access. This is emotional sovereignty, not isolation, not detachment. Just a deep internal knowing that you do not need to earn what is meant to meet you. And here is a question that rises softly in the background of your awareness. If someone met you exactly where you are now, with the same level of presence, effort, and growth you offer, would you still feel the need to ask for more? Or would you finally feel what alignment actually feels like in the body? Not excitement, not intensity, but a steady sense of being met. This is the space you are learning to live in now, where love is not dramatic, where connection is not confusing, where you no longer have to convince yourself that something is enough, because your heart already knows, and it is no longer willing to settle for anything that does not move forward with you. There is a subtle confidence growing inside you now, not the kind that needs to be announced, not the kind that proves anything, just a quiet sense of inner alignment. You feel it when you wake up, when decisions come faster, when your body no longer hesitates the way it used to. Something in you is no longer negotiating with life. You are responding from a deeper place. And this is where things begin to shift in ways that feel almost unreal. Not because the universe suddenly became generous, but because you finally stopped accepting what was draining you. You start to notice how your environment changes without effort. Different conversations find you. Different people listen to you. Different opportunities feel natural instead of forced. It is not luck. It is resonance. Your nervous system is sending a new signal now. Not one of urgency, not one of scarcity, but one of self-trust. And the world always mirrors the state of your inner climate. When you tolerated confusion, you attracted chaos. When you tolerated being unseen, you attracted emotional distance. When you tolerated almost, life kept giving you partial experiences. But now, your internal boundary has shifted. You are no longer available for what costs you peace, and that changes everything. Not in a mystical way, in a psychological one. Your posture changes, your tone changes, your eyes no longer search for validation. People feel that before you ever say a word. There is something deeply magnetic about emotional stability, about someone who is not trying to be chosen, about someone who is already rooted in themselves. And Aquarius, this is where your natural energy becomes powerful. Waktu, you are an air sign. You influence through presence, not control, through ideas, not force. The moment you stopped trying to convince life, life started paying attention to you. You do not attract what you desire. You attract what feels normal to your nervous system. And your nervous system just learned a new definition of normal. One that includes respect, clarity, mutual effort, reciprocity. So of course your reality reorganizes, not because you visualized harder, but because you raised the baseline of what you allow. Your frequency changed, not in a spiritual fantasy way, in the way your brain processes patterns, in the way your body responds to energy, in the way your intuition filters signals. You walk into rooms differently now. You speak without rehearsing. You listen without shrinking. And the world responds accordingly. Better people do not feel intimidating anymore. Better work does not feel out of reach. Better versions of yourself feel natural, not aspirational. You are no longer chasing alignment. You are living inside it. And here is the part most people never realize. Manifestation is not about attracting something new. It is about removing what keeps you disconnected from what is already available. The moment you stop tolerating what drains you, you automatically create space for what nourishes you. This is not magic. This is emotional physics. Your standards shape your reality. Your self-respect calibrates your experiences. Your inner dialogue programs your outer life, and you have rewritten the script. Not with affirmations, but with boundaries. Not with vision boards, but with discernment. So when life responds now, it feels different. Less dramatic, more grounded, more sustainable. Not highs and lows, but a steady expansion. And here is a quiet question that floats through your awareness. If you stopped trying to attract anything at all and simply continued honoring your inner alignment, what kind of life would naturally find you? Not the life you imagined, but the one that feels calm in your body, clear in your mind, and honest in your heart. This is where true attraction lives, not in desire, not in effort, but in the deep internal decision to no longer live below your emotional truth. And from this place, Aquarius, everything that arrives is not a reward. It is a reflection. There is a calm certainty resting inside you now. Not excitement, not anticipation. Just a quiet understanding that something has already shifted. You feel it in the way you breathe, in the way your body no longer braces for disappointment, in the way your thoughts are no longer asking when, but noticing what is. Tomorrow does not feel distant anymore. It feels close, not as an event, as a direction. You are standing in the aftertaste of many invisible decisions, the moments where you did not react, the times you chose rest instead of proving, the days you listened to your inner voice instead of the noise around you. Nothing dramatic happened, and yet everything did. This is how real change arrives. Without fireworks, without announcements, just a slow internal alignment that rewires how you experience reality. You are no longer waiting for life to become something else. You are becoming someone who can finally receive it. There is a softness in your presence now. Not weakness, not surrender. A softness that comes from self-permission. You gave yourself the right to exist fully, without apologizing, without shrinking your needs, without negotiating your truth. And the universe responds differently to someone who is no longer hiding. Not because fate intervened, but because your nervous system stopped signaling lack, stopped signaling fear, stopped signaling survival. You are no longer living in reaction, you are living in authorship, and that changes the texture of everything. The conversations feel cleaner, the choices feel lighter, the future feels less like pressure and more like space. You are not manifesting a miracle. You are experiencing the consequences of emotional honesty, of choosing yourself when it was uncomfortable, of letting go without closure, of trusting your internal compass even when no one else understood your direction. These were not glamorous decisions. They were quiet, lonely at times, invisible to the world. But they built something inside you that cannot be undone. A sense of inner authority, a relationship with yourself that does not require permission. And now, tomorrow is simply the echo of that. Not a surprise, not a reward. Just the natural unfolding of who you have already become. Aquarius, your soul does not crave perfection. It craves alignment. It wants your outer life to finally match your inner truth. Your actions to reflect your values. Your relationships to reflect your emotional maturity. And you are closer than you think. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer running from yourself. You no longer abandon your feelings to keep peace. You no longer silence your intuition to belong. You no longer postpone your life waiting for certainty. You live now from coherence. And coherence is the real power. It means what you think, feel, and choose are finally moving in the same direction. It means your energy is no longer scattered. It means you are not betraying yourself in small ways anymore. And that alone transforms your reality. Not instantly, not magically, but permanently. Because once you stop shrinking, the world has to meet you at your true size. And here is a final question that lands gently, without urgency. If tomorrow is simply the result of how deeply you honored yourself today, what kind of life are you already creating without realizing it? Not the life you hope for, the life your current choices are building. This is what it is finally happening means. Not a moment, not a breakthrough, but a steady return to your authentic rhythm, where nothing false can survive, nothing misaligned can remain, nothing conditional can replace your inner truth. And from this point forward, you are not waiting for the future. You are living inside it. And before you leave this space tonight, just pause for a moment. Not to think, not to analyze, just to feel where you are right now. The version of you listening to this is not the same one who started. Something has softened, something has cleared, something has remembered itself. And that matters more than you realize. Because healing does not always feel like change. Sometimes it feels like recognition, like coming home to a truth that was waiting quietly inside you all along. Aquarius, you do not need to become someone new. You were never broken. You were only disconnected from your own rhythm. And tonight, you found it again. In your breath, in your boundaries, in your willingness to choose yourself without apology. That is not a small thing. That is the beginning of a different life. Not a louder life, a truer one. One where your intuition leads, where your energy is respected, where your heart is not asked to carry what is not yours. So if this message touched something in you, if you felt seen, even for a second, leave a comment and tell me what part resonated. Not for me, for you. Let your voice exist. Let your story be heard. You are not alone in this shift. And if you want to continue this journey together, subscribe and stay close. Because the next message is already forming. Deeper, clearer, even more aligned with who you are becoming. Trust yourself, Aquarius. You are exactly where you need to be. The path ahead is not waiting for you to be perfect. It is waiting for you to be real. And you already are. The journey continues. And I will be right here with you when the next chapter begins.